The United States Navy fields the most powerful fleet on Earth. But the weapon it fears most is not a hypersonic missile or a nuclear submarine. It is a metal canister drifting beneath the surface, sometimes costing less than $1,000. A sea mine. One detonation can cripple a warship. But the real danger is not the blast. It is what happens to an entire fleet the moment mines are even suspected in the water. A fleet built for speed can be brought to a crawl by a rumor. The moment a minefield is suspected, even if no explosion has happened, everything changes. Destroyers that normally slice through open water at 30 knots drop to 5 knots, inching forward while sonar teams scan for shapes that might not even be there. The open ocean, once a highway, becomes a twilight zone where every shadow could hide disaster. No commander risks charging ahead. The logic is simple: a single mistake can cost $1 billion ship, hundreds of lives, and the mission itself. So the order comes down: wait for clearance. Engines idle, crews stand by. Hours pass, sometimes days, as unmanned drones and mine-hunting helicopters sweep the water, chasing echoes and false alarms. The fleet, built for decisive action, is forced into patience and caution. The damage is not always measured in hulls or casualties. It is measured in lost momentum. Every minute spent waiting for a corridor to open is a minute when the enemy can reposition, when convoys pile up, when global shipping schedules unravel. The psychological effect is just as real as the physical. Uncertainty spreads through every level of command. The enemy does not have to sink a ship to win. They only have to make the US Navy hesitate. Mine warfare attacks the core of modern naval power: access, speed, and freedom of movement. In a world where warships are designed to dominate through rapid maneuver and overwhelming force, mines flip the script. They force the strong to act weak, the fast to go slow, and the confident to second-guess every move. This is why the mere suspicion of mines can paralyze a fleet. Not because of what has happened, but because of what might happen next. The threat lingers, invisible and unresolved, holding up billions in cargo and tying down warships meant for other battles. The US Navy calls this the Twilight Zone, a space where movement is possible but never free. Where the world's most advanced ships are forced to tiptoe, waiting for a green light that may never come. The real weapon is not the explosion. It is the shadow that falls over every decision, every route, every hour lost. Before a single mine is found, the fleet has already lost its most important advantage: the ability to move when and where it chooses. A narrow waterway can become the most expensive bottleneck on Earth. In 1967, a handful of Egyptian mine layers turned the Suez Canal, a global artery, into a dead end. They dropped roughly 2,000 contact and influence mines across the northern sector, blocking all passage in a single night. The world's shipping lanes snapped shut. What followed wasn't just a military problem. The Suez Canal stayed closed for 8 years. Merchant ships, oil tankers, and naval convoys were forced to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, a detour that added nearly 13,000 kilometers to every voyage between Europe and Asia. The World Bank tallied the cost: $2.5 billion in extra fuel and delays in the first year alone. Oil deliveries to Europe dropped by 10%, sending prices into wild swings. The canal, once a shortcut, became a barrier that reshaped the global economy. Clearing the mines was a marathon. British, French, and Egyptian teams worked for years, phase by phase, using sonar, divers, and primitive robots. They found hundreds of mines in the first 12 months, but the job dragged on. By the time the canal reopened in 1975, 5 million man-hours had been spent, and $400 million had vanished in clearance costs, over $2 billion in today's money. During the closure, at least 15% of the world's shipping capacity sat idle or burned extra fuel on the long route south. The lesson was clear. In a narrow channel, even a modest minefield can close the door on global trade. It doesn't take a high-tech missile or a fleet of submarines, just a few well-placed explosives and the right geography. The world's most powerful navies were forced to wait, reroute, and spend years undoing what took a single night to achieve. That's the real danger of mines and choke points. They turn access into a privilege, speed into a memory, and freedom of movement into a negotiation. The Suez closure is often cited in military circles as a warning, proof that a cheap, old weapon can outlast modern firepower. Today, every planner who studies the Strait of Hormuz sees the shadow of Suez. The question hangs in the air. If it happened once, what stops it from happening again? April 2026. The Strait of Hormuz narrows to just 21 nautical miles, a bottleneck for the world's oil and cargo. 36 mines, laid in silence, are enough to bring global shipping to a halt. The geometry is unforgiving. 2 shipping lanes, each barely 2 miles wide, squeezed between shoals and sandbanks. Every vessel, from tankers to destroyers, is forced into single file. There's no alternate route, no margin for error. Before sunrise, a contact is detected near Hormuz Buoy 1. CENTCOM's commander faces a stark choice: risk the fleet or wait. The order is swift: stop all movement. Engines shut down. Crews wait, surrounded by uncertainty. Warships designed for action now sit motionless, held hostage by the unseen. At 0600 on April 14th, the sweep begins. USS Artemis leads, joined by British and French minehunters. Sonar pulses search for threats. Each echo could mean disaster. Within 30 minutes, tankers are diverted to the Gulf of Oman. By noon, a dozen ships are stalled, insurance rates for a single passage have tripled, and operators invoke force majeure. Oil supply falters. Night brings no relief. Every contact is checked, every shadow investigated. On April 15th, remotely operated vehicles destroy the 12th mine. Only then does the commander allow a partial reopening. 6 ships inch forward, escorted by warships and drones. Even as 78% of traffic resumes, delays average 45 minutes per vessel. The threat of a missed mine lingers. By April 16th, the last sector is cleared. The strait reopens, but 1,200 voyages are delayed, billions lost. The real weapon is not the mine, but the pause it forces. A billion-dollar destroyer can be stopped cold by a scrap of metal in the mud. The U.S. Navy's own mine warfare officers will say it outright. The real power of a sea mine is not the blast. It is the way it forces the world's fastest fleet to crawl, hesitate, and second-guess every move. The numbers are blunt. In a typical mine-clearing operation, more than 70% of sonar contacts turn out to be false alarms, rocks, cables, or shadows. But each one must be checked. That means every blip on the screen demands a halt, an investigation, and often hours of careful work, just to rule out a threat that is not even there. Clearing a single square nautical mile can take 12 to 24 hours and cost upwards of $120,000 in fuel, crew time, and expendables. The process is slow by design. No one rushes when a mistake means losing a ship. During the 1991 Gulf War, Iraqi mines knocked the USS Tripoli and the USS Princeton out of action within days. Both survived, but the entire amphibious assault was called off, and the U.S. fleet stood down until the field could be swept. The lesson was clear. A handful of cheap mines forced a high-tech Navy to stop in its tracks. Today, the gap has only grown. The Navy now operates fewer than 5 dedicated mine countermeasure ships worldwide, a number that a recent GAO analyst called dangerously low for global commitments. New AI-assisted sonar systems promise to cut false positives by 30%, but even the most optimistic trials have not erased the core problem. The fleet is still forced to work slow, investigate every contact, and accept that the real enemy is uncertainty itself. As one mine warfare officer put it, mines don't just block the sea, they block decision. Every minute spent clearing, every ship held back, hands the initiative to the enemy. The U.S. Navy's greatest vulnerability is not a missile streaking over the horizon. It is the silent, invisible threat that turns speed and power into caution and delay. Until the technical bottleneck is broken, the oldest weapon in naval warfare will keep dictating the terms of battle. In every narrow waterway, the world's most advanced fleets still freeze for a weapon that costs less than a dinner out. The paradox holds. Power becomes hesitation. Until navies can move without fear, a silent mine keeps rewriting the rules of global strategy. What would you do to break that stalemate?